Hey, sports card fans, it's John, Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. When I'm looking to purchase a particular graded vintage baseball card, I like to do my research. I want to know what that card has been selling for, actual sales prices when I'm looking to, find a card online, usually through eBay, or whether I'm at a show and I see that a dealer has a particular card and it's listed at a particular price, what that card has actually been selling for. I'm always looking for bargains, good deals. I want to pay as little as possible for a card to stretch my hobby dollars. So I do a lot of research, especially I don't go to too many shows, so I buy a lot of my cards online on eBay. And whether it's a card listed as a buy it now, if there's a best offer, for me to know maybe, how compared to what the card is actually selling for and that buy it now price, if there's a best offer, whether it's reasonable for me to put in an offer, or if it's an auction, I know roughly what I would want to pay for that card, and so that factors into how much I would want to put in for my maximum bid. So in this video, I thought I would show off different areas that you can do some research to find recent sale prices. So the first one, I have a couple that are free and one that does cost, I think it's $18 a month or $180 for the whole year. But let's first take a look at some of the free options that are out there. And so the first one, of course, is eBay. Now, if you just pull up eBay, you can do a search up here. Now, I'm going to search for, and I already had it done in a recent search here. I want to do a 1960 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 4. It's one of the cards I have on my 100 cards for $100,000 list that I haven't purchased yet. So let's say this is the next one on that list that I'm targeting. All right, so I'm going to do a search here. Now, this is the active listings. So I want to find out what the cards in eBay's database, the ones that have actually ended, that have sold. So if you go on the left hand side here, you can scroll down. It's toward the bottom here. You can see completed items and sold items. You don't want completed items. Those are all the listings that have ended, whether a card has sold or not. So if someone had a card listed as a 30-day listing, buy it now, and the 30 days have ended, it'll show up under completed items, but it won't show that it actually sold. So you want to do the sold items, okay? And now, I'm not sure what's going on with eBay's search engine, but as you can see, I put in Hank Aaron PSA 4 at the top here, and here's a PSA 8, here's a PSA 1. So on the left-hand side, now this may be dependent upon how the seller entered the listing, what information he provided for that particular card. So it may not show everything, but you can see here the grade. So I want a PSA 4. So if I click on a 4, now it's going to show the listings. Now, for the 1960 top set, Hank Aaron had an all-star card. So this is going to show every Hank Aaron card from 1960 Topps. So here's the all-star card, but here's the regular card. The regular card's number 300. So if I want, I can narrow it down. Hank Aaron, if I do 300... So it shows the completed listings, sold listings. I still want to go here and select grade 4. And now it's going to show, hopefully, all the card number 300s. Now here's another one. It even though I put 300 here, it's still showing up that all-star card. So this searching on eBay through completed listings, it's not an exact science. Now, if you notice here, the numbers here are in green, which indicates that it actually sold for this price. So this particular copy here, on October 30th, it was an auction. There was one bid, and it sold for $150 plus $5 shipping, right? But you see this listing up here, sold on November 2nd, best offer accepted. So the seller listed this at $145, buy it now or best offer. And someone sent in an offer and the seller accepted it. But this doesn't tell you what the actual accepted price was. So again, doing this type of search through eBay has its limitations, but you can say, okay, well, the last one sold for $150. Here's one that it was a buy it now and someone paid $165 for it. Here's another one that was an auction, went for $132. So, you can do some math, maybe come up with a quick average and give you just some ballpark of what a PSA 4 Hank Aaron card number 300 sells for. Now, if you've been collecting vintage, or if you're new to vintage, if you've been collecting, you know this, but if you're new to vintage, not all PSA 4s are the same. You can get a PSA 4 that's a little off center, maybe nicer corners or a surface, qualifies as a PSA 4. You may also get one that is well centered, but maybe the corners have a little bit more issues, but still qualifies as a PSA 4. As you can see here, great eye appeal. Sometimes cards sell for higher if they have a nicer eye appeal, and that's all in the eyes of the beholder as to what a great eye appeal is. Some collectors don't mind a card that's off-centered as long as the corners look nice. But generally speaking, if you have a well-centered card or like a mid-grade card, they tend to sell a little bit more than ones that are off-center. So here, you'd have to look at each listing, pull it up, and then gauge, okay, is this one here? This one here looks, just without clicking on the listing, it looks a little off-center compared to that one. That one maybe looks a little bit better centered. So you can click on the listing. Maybe they have some closer or more detailed images that you can look at and do your research that way. What I find when I'm doing researching on eBay is I go to another site that eBay has, and it's called Terapeak Product Research. If you just do a Google search for eBay Terapeak, 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 you'll get to this site here. The other limitation to just searching on eBay is they only go, their database that they show completed sales for, I believe, only goes back 3 months. Now, that may be enough for you to say, hey, I just want to look at the last 3 months of data. But depending on the card that you're looking for and the grade and so on, there may not have been a card that has sold on eBay in the last 3 months. So you may not get any returned values. So instead of a 4, there's been one PSA 10, but let's say you were looking for a PSA 9. Well, there has not been a PSA 9 sold on eBay within the last 3 months. Or there is PSA 9. So let's see, is there one here, a PSA, maybe a PSA 3? No, there's a 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, maybe there is all of them here. But you may find a card that doesn't have a particular sale over the last 3 months. But this Terapeak, you can see here, you can pick the dates from a calendar. And I've chosen to look for sales over the entire year. And I'll show you why that's maybe somewhat important. So again, I'm going to type in 1960 Topps Aaron, and I'll try to do a card number 300 PSA 4. All right, in a PSA 4, so this gives you a summary here. There were 63 total card number 300s sold for an average price of $170. And it gives a chart here, but then here are all the listings. All right. Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find. Now, this one here, though, this one listed, it has a qualifier, miscut. So it shows up in this search here, and I believe is part of the calculation of the average sold price. So as you can see here, that qualifier card sold for a lot less than some of the other ones here. So again, keep that in mind. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to find this particular listing here, sold November 2nd. Let's see, you can do you can sort by last sold. So here's November 2nd. All right, so you have this listing here on eBay's regular site. All right, best offer was accepted, but what was it? Well, here through Terapeak, it says that the seller accepted a price of $140, $5 less than what the buy it now price was. So that'll confirm that it did sell, and eBay tells you that the actual price that was paid for through a completed transaction was $140. So again, it gives an average here, and you can sort it by date last sold, you can sort it by average sold price, and so on. So it's a little bit better, in my opinion, than just going through eBay's regular site and trying to look for completed listings, or sold listings, I should say. This Terapeak research is fairly good. Now, I use this for the videos that I do for the top 10 PSA sales on eBay. I use the Terapeak service. I don't try to do some searching here through eBay's regular site, and this way I can just do 1950s and stuff, and it'll show all the cards from the 1950s, and then I can search for the average sold price, high to low, and so on. So that's how I do research for that video, but it would also be the research that I would do to find out what I would want to pay for that card. So just looking through these last four, you see 140, 150, 165, 132, very similar to here. But again, whenever you have one of these best offer accepted, this gives you actually what that price was. All right, so that in a nutshell is eBay. So the other free option here is actually through PSA's website. The one limitation here is that I believe it only shows, does research for PSA graded vintage cards. If you were looking for, instead of PSA, you wanted SGC, all right, SGC. Now you can find out what SGC copies sell for. And again, as well as Terapeak, you can go instead of PSA, SGC, and you can find those listings. So the average sale price is $156. And again, there's an auction, fixed price, auction, and so on. Now, occasionally you'll get a listing here. I don't know if this would show up. The more narrow you search, the more accurate the data will be. I think I did a previous search while doing some stuff for this video. I didn't use card number 300, and there was, I think, a lot of so many cards of 1960s sold as a lot, and one of them included a PSA card of someone, but also included a Hank Aaron, and that showed up on the listing, and so that would have impacted the average sale price. But let's get back to PSA. So let's assume that you are looking for a PSA 8 copy like I would be. All right, so I'm going to type in here 1960 Topps Aaron. All right, now here are different listings that show. Again, it all depends on how narrow you do the search term, but here we go, the 1960 Topps Hank Aaron card number 300. If you click on that, what it does is it pulls up all the different grades. Now, PSA has two different prices. They have their most recent price, average price of some of the different databases outside of eBay. It's not as extensive as maybe the page site that I'm going to talk about next, but they do some average pricing, and then they have PSA's price. I'm not sure how PSA themselves determine the price. Down here for a PSA 4, they say that the most recent price that they have in their database of sales is $150 with an average price of roughly $142. Now, they don't have a quote unquote PSA price. If you look at a PSA 5, their PSA price is somewhat in line. Same here with a PSA 6, the average price $480, they say $460. But look at this. If for a PSA 7, based on their database of actual sales, the average price for PSA 7 is around $844. The PSA price, they say $3,200. And look at the difference here in the PSA 8. So whenever I'm doing any type of research on PSA to maybe confirm or maybe look at some additional data than say eBay, I never use PSA price. I just don't trust how they come up with those prices. I look at the average price that they have for sales. So let's look at, again, we're looking at a PSA 4. So I'm going to click on this link here. And hopefully this will come up. I know PSA's website has not been loading very well lately. Here we go. Okay. Now here you can't do any different, sorting. It just sorts it by date. But here's one here. So $150, $132, $137, $147. And here's the auction house. Now they have eBay, they have Golden Auctions, and the Collector Connection, and maybe a couple others, but I think their database of other auction houses beyond eBay is somewhat limited, but I think it gives you a little bit more of a data set than just eBay. So again, you had the average price there of the $141, I think it was. And then here you can look at what the last one sold for. You can click on the link and it'll pull up that eBay listing. I believe if you click on that, here it is. Here's a dated 4. There's the picture. You can actually view the listing on eBay's website and so on. Let's go back here. The other thing here is that it shows it has data going a lot further back. Now again, Terapeak, you can probably go back several years. I don't know, maybe 2-3 years through eBay. But if you scroll down here on PSA's website, even in the first 25, it goes all the way back to 2021. And they have a graph down here, and it goes all the way back to 2016. So again, is a price that it sold back in October of 2018 relevant today? Probably not. But it gives you a long-term look at what that card has been selling for. And as you can see here, the trend is like, some vintage cards, it's gone down a little bit. So again, that may give you a little bit more insight of, hey, I don't necessarily need to pay top dollar up here. I should be able to find a card roughly in this price range here. So again, PSA has its downfalls. You're limited to PSA. If you're looking for SGC, you're probably not going to find it on here because this is PSA's website. But if you are looking for a PSA graded copy, PSA's website has a little bit more data, I think, than Terapeak. So let's go now to the paid site, and that's Vintage Card Prices. I think I mentioned earlier they charge, I think it's $17.99 a month or $179.99 for an entire year. So if you pay for an entire year, you essentially get 2 months free. This has some other options beyond just pricing. You can enter in your inventory and track prices and things like that. But for now, we're just going to take a look at doing a search here. So I did a recent search here. So 1960 Topps, Hank Aaron, number 300. All right. What's nice about Vintage Card Prices is on one screen here, you have PSA. Here's SGC. Here's BVG. Here's CSG, PSA qualifier sales. So when you had in, I think it was over here under the, if I can go back here quick, there's a PSA 4. I don't know if this one had the one that had the qualifier. I'm not sure. Maybe it was the Terapeak that had a qualifier here. Where was it? No, that's SGC. Let me go back here. There's the PSA, and I think this one had a qualifier in it. Yeah, here's a miscut. So again, here it lumps all the PSA 4s, whether it's a qualifier or not, for vintage card prices. VCP, they have their own separate data set for qualifiers, and they even have GAI. So again, in this example here, I'm looking for a PSA 4. Well, just off this quick table here, I can see that the most recent high, not necessarily the last price sold, but the most recent high is $190, and the recent low is $137.50. The average is right around $150. So according to VCP, averages around $150 for PSA. They are saying that the average was, let's see if I can go back here. They're saying the average is around 142. Again, somewhat similar to VCP at 150. And here you have to do your own calculation. You just have to find out which ones you want in to calculate for an average. All right. But back to VCP. So let's click on any one of these here. And it's going to pull up a little bit more detailed view of all the sales. Once it goes, okay, here we go. And here's a graph. Now this initial graph only goes back to May of this year, but there's a bar down here that you can slide and take it to toward the end of 2021 and see the different prices. Now VCP has a lot more different data sets beyond eBay. So let's look at 100 listings here. So of course you have eBay. Here's PWC Weekly's auction on PWCC's website. They have REA. They have Heritage. So they have other a more diverse set of data points. So the more data points you have, generally speaking, the better idea that you have of what a particular card is selling for. So through here, you can click on the image. Again, you can do some more research. Okay, well, that's that copy looks to be fairly well centered and so on. And as I mentioned earlier, the eye appeal, you can see, well, all right, that one, what was the eye? Well, here's one that sold for 190. What was the eye appeal on that? Well, okay, maybe a little off-centered. Maybe that's a little bit of an outlier. It is one of the newer slabs. You can tell by the PSA number there. And it also has the seller. So if you know vintage cards online, here's Probstein. Typically, sometimes cards that are on Probstein auctions tend to go for maybe a little bit more. Here, it looks like it is right around the average. The last one that was sold through Probstein on eBay. Here's another one, $137.50. Obviously, the buyer is hidden, but gives you a little bit more information, more data sets, but you pay for it. Now, the last thing I want to show off in terms of your research. So you have various sources to find actual sale prices. Then you have eye appeal that factor into the sale prices sometimes. Again, if you have a really nice eye appeal PSA 4, well centered, it may sell for a little bit more than one that is off center. Another factor that you would need to continue to look at as you're doing your research is what's the population count? So again, PSA, I know some of the other websites or the grading companies SGC is working on a pop database. But PSA obviously has been doing this for a while. And since I collect PSA graded cards, I can go to PSA's website and the pop report, and I can look up 1960 Topps Hank Aaron. And what I'll do here, it has a whole again, all depends on how detailed you put the search terms, but here's 1960 Topps baseball cards, and there is card number 300. So if I click on that link, now it's going to pull up all the cards from the 1960 Topps set. So I need to scroll down and find card number 300, and looks like it is on screen number 2. All right, so here is card number 300, the Hank Aaron that I'm looking at that I want to buy. So here are all the different counts based on the grade. You can see that there haven't been any graded PSA 10s. There have been 9 9s. And if you look here in PSA 4, actually of the 4,100 that have been graded by PSA that have not received qualifiers, so that plus there would be, they instituted that a few years ago, but I guess in theory you could get a 2+, which is a little bit nicer than a 2. Maybe a 2.5 would fall into that category. If it's a 2.5, it would be part of that number there. But if you notice, for just the straight PSA 4s, there have been almost 1,000 out of 4,100. So maybe around 25% of all the cards graded by PSA have been PSA 4s. So that tells me that there should be, I don't want to say plenty, but there should be a sufficient number of PSA 4s out there, both at card shows and especially online. So if you see a PSA 4, you may have some options. You may have several listings that you can go through. Maybe you can find a couple that come up for auction, or ones that have a buy it now and best offer, so you can make maybe try to get it at a good price. Or if you're at a show, you may see a dealer have a PSA 4 copy, and maybe odds are there will be another dealer at the show that may also have another PSA 4 copy that you can take a look at both, see which dealer is willing to work with you, and maybe get the best price between the two that are available at the show. On the flip side, if you've been following my channel and my videos, you know that I recently completed the 1978 Topps Hall of Fame run. And the last card that I needed was the Jim Cott. Now, I had to pay a lot more than I was hoping for, but I knew with some of the listings that have been out there, or the so few listings out there, that I knew I was going to have to pay a good deal for a PSA 8 that I wanted. So let's take a look at the population report for the 1978 Topps Jim Cott. So here we are. There's the 78 Topps set. We need to find card number 715. All right, so let's go down here and go to the last page. And find card number 715. Scroll down, and there we go. All right, so for Jim Cott, 17 PSA 10s, 76 PSA 9s, and again, I've been searching for a PSA 8. There are only 29 to date that have been graded PSA 8. So needless to say, not very many have come up on eBay for sale or auction. I think I had been looking for a PSA 8 copy for at least a year, and finally one came up for auction. Now again, in my research, for my 78 Topps Hall of Fame run, other than the Eddie Murray rookie and the Molitor Trammell rookie, I was looking for at least PSA 8s. I have some PSA 8s, majority PSA 8s, a few PSA 9s. Well, all right, I was like, well, there's maybe a better chance of a PSA 9 coming up since there's like almost 3 times the number of PSA 9s that there are PSA 8s. Well, whenever a PSA 9 would come up, they would sell for like $200, maybe on the low end, maybe $175. I definitely was not going to be paying that much for a PSA 9 Jim Kaat. So again, through my research, I knew that PSA 9s were not in my price range, so I had to wait for a PSA 8. One finally came up for auction, and I knew through my research what they had been selling for, and they were in the $75 to $100 range. And I think I was fortunate enough to pick it up for around $80 some. So again, I had a lot of information going into that auction of what I had an idea of what the card would ultimately sell for and what I was willing to put in for a high bid. And fortunately, I was able to win that card. All right, so again, there's a couple of the free sites and a paid site that you can use to do some research when you're looking to purchase graded vintage cards. Now, again, this is for graded. Now, you can use eBay and the Terapeak for ungraded cards, but it is much less of an exact science. You could put in 1960 Topps Hank Aaron, and you could do like minus PSA, minus SGC, minus BVG to filter out all the graded copies. And then if you're looking for a particular grade, you'd have to hope that the seller puts VG or EX, or maybe they'll spell out excellent or very good. It all depends on how that listing is worded as to whether that card would show up on a search. And then it gets to a whole other debate of, okay, now you have to trust that the seller is grading that properly. So you have to really look at the images and so on. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done to research ungraded cards on eBay or Terapeak. Again, once you get to PSA or VCP, now you're in the graded card realm. So would love to know what research you do when you're looking to purchase vintage graded cards, or do you not do any research? Do you just see a listing on eBay or go to a show and a dealer has a card listed that you're interested in for $300, and if you can pick it up for $250, you're happy with that, even though maybe other examples of that card have been selling for $200? Maybe that doesn't matter to you and you feel you got a good deal at $250 and you're happy with that. That's great. We'd love to know what your thought process is when you go to purchase vintage graded cards. With that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.